Всем добрый день. Рад вас всех здесь
Well,
видеть.
hello everyone. I'm happy to see you all. And today we're going to
что
talk
вообще угрожает нам в быту. Какая у нас
of
есть
what
электроника,
threatens us
какой мы
in
пользуемся,
our
и
houses,
задумываться и воспринимаем
the
это как
electronics that we don't know,
И
and
немножко обо мне.
the electronics that
Я
we
достаточно давно увлекаюсь
perceive
электроникой. Это далеко не основная моя
as
работа,
usual.
это просто хобби.
I like
В
electronics. It's
качестве
one of my
хобби я
hobbies.
коллекционирую разные
And as a
странные
hobby, I
устройства.
collect
Начать с того, как
different
я сегодня
strange
расскажу.
devices. And
И
some of them
сразу
I'm going to mention.
очень важный дисклеймер.
An
Если
important
вы
disclaimer
сомневаетесь в чем-то связанном с
that if
электроникой,
you
обязательно
doubt
обращайтесь к
something about
профессионалу.
electronics,
Если вы
you should
проектируете
talk to
сложные ответственные
professionals.
системы,
If you are
если
designing
есть
some
требования
complex
регуляторов,
systems,
если
if you
идет
have
речь о каком-то
regulatory
медицинском
requirements, if
оборудовании
you
для
talk about some
того,
medical
которое реально
equipment
навредит человеку
or things
напрямую,
that may
обязательно
damage
консультируйтесь с
people
профессионалом.
directly,
Существуют
you
компании,
need to
которые
consult
это
with
делают, они
professionals.
это
There are
делают
companies that
достаточно дорого,
do
но
this,
это явно
they do it
дешевле,
quite
чем
expensive,
человеческой жизни.
but it's cheaper than human life.
И я немножко расскажу о том, как я вообще
So let me
пришел к
talk
теме сегодняшнего
of how
вебинара.
I started to
Где-то еще в
focus on
2020
this.
году я очень сильно увлекся GSM-устройствами.
I was fascinated by GSM devices.
Это
GSM devices,
самая дешевая IoT-техника,
it's the cheapest
потому что она
IoT
работает проще всего.
technology
Берем
because it
такое
works
устройство,
in the
вставляем
most
его в
simple way.
устройство,
We
дальше
take a device,
прокручиваем либо с помощью
insert
либо с помощью
inside the
SMS. То есть, по сути, нам нужно
SIM card, and we
устройство, которое
can
выходит
use
какая-то
it with
мобильная сеть.
calls
Очень
or
много таких устройств. Это и
touches.
разные
There are
сигнализации, от
many such
дешевых до крайне
devices.
дорогих. Это
There are alarm
различные
systems
пародии на умные дома с
from
управлением
cheapest to most
смартфонами.
expensive. There are
Это умные
also
шлагбаумы, которые
like
подключаются к
smart
замку или
house
по звонку. Такие
uh,
же гаражные двери.
like
У нас
devices.
существует очень
There are
много разных
garage
технологий,
doors,
доходя даже до каких-то очень
automatic
странных уличных контроллеров, которые
locks
реально
and
переключаются с
gates.
помощью смс.
And there are also industrial controllers that are managed by text messages. So there are three problems that most vulnerabilities are very simple. We don't need to dump the, we don't need to have a deep analysis. We can see that there is a 4-symbol password. We can call, send an SMS or text message, and then we are fully controlling this device. And both vendors or users, they are not about security in this. So like smart watches for children. These are the watches that allow parents to call to understand where the child is, and I've shown how it can be broken. And one of the participants say that I bought these watches for my daughter, and I said, "Are you going to change this?" "No, I'm just scared." So he said that he will not do anything with these watches. And the problems that I've mentioned in 2017, in 2019, in 2022, they're all repeatable. They're typical. There are no new vulnerabilities, and old vulnerabilities are still there. So I thought that we could look at security of devices as to the end users, those that don't have to understand firmware, understand how protocols work. So can the end users understand whether their devices are safe or not safe, and make a decision whether they should use this device? So this is like a research, because it's a research, but not professional, but it's a user-like research. And we have two goals: is to answer specific question. If I am going to buy a smart house, what it would lead to? Would I be tapped? Would they break my coffee machine or get access to a web camera? And the same is about any automation. So I'm trying to understand what happens in my case. And the second goal is having fun. We like to learn something new, to understand what kind of attacks are there, to find some interesting vulnerabilities, or to know that we can hack IoT. And the key is that the research is not something very difficult. We just need to understand how this device works and what happens if it would be broken. If there is a vulnerability, can we upgrade this device? We would have an expensive box which exists, and we're afraid to switch it on. Or other problems that can be seen from the very beginning. So the research doesn't have to be practical. We don't have to buy a device and do something with it. We can start from reading forums, reading feedback, reading documentation, because documentation often have a lot of interesting examples. Let's look at one of them. So we see there example from a description to one controller for the smart alarm system. So it shows that they're using a 4-digit SMS code. And most probably you can brute force this. And we can read documentation and find out that we cannot put more difficult code. So cheap electronics, we cannot make it more safe using more complex passwords. And what would happen if something goes wrong with the device? If we talk about some industrial equipment or network equipment of high class, we expect that it will say that there is some failure, the equipment worked for some time, and the domestic alarm system or smart house may crash, and it would have no logs, no informing that there was a failure. Next example is whether the device works stably, or other situations when a vendor sells one device because like a seller may buy a device from the vendor. When these devices are sold, he's selling different devices under the same name. Sometimes it's obvious because the box is different, a different name. Sometimes the vendor just repacks these devices. And then we have situations when under one device we can get a different device. Sometimes it's more safe, sometimes it's less safe. And when these devices are disguised as different devices. So sometimes there are similar models or models that are disguised as other models. Sometimes there is no documentation to a device, or it's available only to sellers or buyers. So first we need to buy an IoT device, and then the seller will send you a two-pager PDF. Sometimes there could be 3 or 4 variants of documentations, and each of them would be more concise than the other. One may have bad translation, the other would have some translation with some explanation, and the fourth would have some password which could be changed. So if you haven't read the instruction that you could, which is difficult to find, and sometimes we also meet defective devices. It's not like it's not working at all. A sensor may detect some events at a lesser distance, which is critical for the alarm system. Some controller may switch off and then switch back, like having problems with battery or power. And that means that we may have problems with watering our garden or lawn. And what kind of devices, what kind of problems could be with devices? Because IoT most always have a problem. Any device has some vulnerability or some features which make them not ideal, suboptimal. So other advantages of this device, like if I want to have a temperature sensor at my boiler to understand that in winter my house is freezing, I will have to replace my equipment, and this device may allow to listen to what I talk in the boiler room. Like if I want to put a no-name no-name speaker, and maybe I need to remove this speaker and use my hands to switch on lights. Sometimes we know that in this situation we won't buy any device without some deep research and full control. And in some situations, we need to balance the pro and cons. IoT does not mean that it's bad. If we have a classical device and it's safe. An example which I've seen 3 times, it's just kettles. What may go wrong with a kettle? They may not switch off. So I decided to put my kettle on, electric kettle, which should switch off when it's boiled. And I returned after 1 hour, and I've seen that there is a sauna in my kitchen. It didn't switch off. So it was, I didn't have what was wrong. I've watched and it works. It switches off. So of course I replaced it. And after several months, my friends told me that they have a different kettle, which if we put water from the tap, it doesn't switch off. And if they use water from a bottle, it works fine. There might be a problem that if we have a problem with a device, it may become a basic problem and not some smart electronics or a hacker which would connect to this device. So what kind of typical problem exists and how we may find them and how a person without some deep knowledge can try to do this. So we have 2 ways of researching this problem. We may follow the track of understanding what are the most dangerous problems for us and how we may tackle them, how well we may realize those attacks or lead to those consequences. And secondly, we may take our devices, take a design of these devices, like controllers, environment, some management tools, some modules, and then trying to understand what kind of problems could be from the devices, getting some huge list, and out of this list to understand what threatens us and how we may fight this. And the first problem is sensor attacks. So sensor is any internal or external component of the device. It may be go together with the device, or it may connect, like get information about environment, such as door sensors for the alarm systems, some volume sensors, temperature sensors for the smart house, checking the air.
И у нас есть в целом три основных
Composition.
направления атаки на них.
And there are three main areas of how to attack. It's to switch off or to bypass a sensor. So if I come to the alarm system and if I would take off the sensor, would it inform that there is a problem? And would we understand what happened with the device if the sensor is out? The second way is to trying to understand whether the sensor is sending something interesting, such as external microphone. If we are standing outside, can we know what happens inside, indoors, like signal interception? And the third way is when we disguise the signal. Like a door is opened, a window is opened, or there is a gas sensor, alarm goes off, like signal spoofing. And a person may throw out this alarm system. And so there are also managed components, like a drive which opens a door. It could be the swimming pool heating element or garden water element. If the protection should go off, if somebody would cut the wire, would the device inform that it cannot measure the temperature and check what happens in the room? We may intercept the signal, and can we detect it? And the third problem, in case of managed components, can we force them to work by spoofing a signal or sending something else? Like electrical collars for dogs. It's a collar with a radio signal and a controller which some are thinking that it's not ethical. But what would happen if the dog is running in a field and somebody may interfere with the signal and sending maximum shock waves? So the most simple attack allows us to do signal spoofing. A different attack is network attack on the devices that are connected to the network. So we may connect this device to Wi-Fi, and to that Wi-Fi we may connect other sensors or use some wired devices. So if we have a wire, what if the intruder will just connect to that wire? Or what if the infected device would be brought to the to Wi-Fi because it has no protection? The other problem is a SIM card. If we have a device at a SIM card and somebody would intrude or take the SIM card, what if there are some services that we have forgotten to disconnect? What if the mobile operator allows to use this SIM card as a key SIM card to manage all other SIM cards? So, like we were trying to protect a barn, and our banking account was compromised or hacked. Sometimes we may hack the controller, but we cannot hack it. Russian smart electronics is the door alarm system, which is managed by SMS.
неправильно отправленная смс, и причем даже не только от владельца, но и от левого человека,
not only from the owner, but from any person, could be used as a command,
что что-то пошло не так,
and the device would say that something went wrong, and in some cases it may be frozen and will send a huge number of text messages consisting of just nines. And I was very much surprised when there was a flow of only nines, and this was a SIM card of a operator with unlimited SMS messages inside the network. So if we have a complex diagram of a smart house where everything is connected by wire, what if somebody would just use electroshocker to attack this wire? And second is the controller being hacked.
Удаленному выполнению кода, потому что мы можем на устройстве...
This is like remote code execution.
В случае, например, GSM-устройств, зачастую там нет ни авторизации.
And in case of GSM devices,
мы можем перебирать пин-коды. В случае
we may
сложных умных устройств, управляемых из интернета,
use different codes.
само устройство...
And when there are internet-managed devices, the device may be protected, but some back-end, which allows to manage this in a vendor cloud, would be a strange application which was developed long ago with many vulnerabilities, with many passwords that have been leaked, and the hackers may get access to thousands of devices without any effort. The other problem is the microphone spoofing, microphone wiretapping, because we're trying to understand what happens in the speakers that are using voice commands, in the sound sensors.
Потому что либо вендор их зачем-то поставил, но не активировал. Иногда бывает, когда вендор создает
talking about microphone tapping. There could be a standard box for all devices, and when the firmware may change its functionality. So some cheap device may have firmware and the hardware from a expensive device. Like many people are working on remotely, they participate in some serious meetings, and they are using some WAPs, like and this could be a targeted attack. So if you work with critical data, you cannot exclude this attack using heated tobacco products. So we may mask everything, we may delete everything, but can we go further? If this device is connected to the internal network, we may try to scan something, find some home computers which are not updated because they are not looking to the internet. Somebody plays something on this computer and making diagrams. Who needs them? And as a result, we may find a lot of interesting things just on the internet because the devices in the home are not upgraded and updated on time. There could be also SIM card attack. We may say that send this SMS, short message to this number, and this allows to install a new password for the mobile operator and get an access. Sometimes it could be used
втянуть владельца этого устройства,
to
будет рассылать какие-то провокационные смс-ки,
to use this
что-то делать,
owner of the SMS of the SIM card in some criminal activities,
трафика для ботнета.
and it may generate a lot of traffic for botnets. Some funny stories. Some smart device may be signed to some content, to some funny stories and anecdotes. But what if these devices have been hacked, and this is some example that it has been compromised and it was noticed? Sometimes in case of the security device, it could be passed, because like if there is a door alarm system, it won't help if somebody would break the wall. And if the sensors are working at a shorter distance, which we have expected, like we may have a lot of alarms, but they won't work. On a regular basis, a group of hackers, they are hacking vendors of external devices. They may manage millions of smart trolleys, smart toy cars. And this is the reality when we buy devices which are connected to to cloud vendors. This is convenient. We don't have to use adjustment, but it leads to many problems. Also, there might be some problems with firmware and with electronics. Sometimes the vendors have changed the firmware of factory firmware, like bookmarks in firmware. So what like they may tamper with firmware, they may hack a kettle, they may try to overheat it and put it on fire. They may they may switch on and off the power outlet, like the power which is used in a smart collar for the dog, or a boiler temperature. So we may be afraid of the attack more than its real consequences, because this is also the media is making hysteria about this, and like some hackers may listen to smart houses, and there might be some scary text message from a smart kettle, like, "Hello, are you sleeping?" And we may be scared more than we should be. Unfortunately, one of big problems that we have very dangerous devices, which allows us to interact with animals and with humans, like myostimulators. I'm not talking about medical equipment, because it's a different story, but there are devices which act on a human with different purposes, like a smart collar for the dog, which may scare the dog or may kill the dog. And we will understand that most probably we don't need this device, and it could be dangerous. And some devices, they create illusion of protection, that we are controlling what's happening. We believe that the alarm system works, and it may be switched off a month ago.
Let's say you have a boiler or a thermostat that's supposed to keep an ambient temperature, but your plants are dead already. And it's an open list. The narrower specific the device is, the weirder the problems can be. Car alarms, for example. The cases there are very diverse and peculiar. And then many vulnerabilities are very different. They are diverse. Some are useless. For example, you have a GSM alarm. You take it to a house where a similar alarm is installed. You run the config and you get the signals from all these sensors at the house. They're not bound to their mother device. They just transmit the signals that they read. It could sound like a nice alarm. You don't have to exploit anything. You have a similar device and get access to the sensors inside. But you will not get any interesting information from this. There is a detection, but you don't know where the sensor is installed even. It's elegant, but useless. Some critical vulnerabilities cannot be fixed. Some have to do with architecture. Let's say there is a delay between an event, a trigger, and an alarm. If the event, for example, breaking the door, destroys the device, it will not issue the alarm. Some devices are never updated and their firmware is not updated. Sometimes you need a proprietary device to update it, even if you found the vulnerability. And then you have the second-hand market, another whole interesting realm. You buy something off someone, or even not second-hand. Distributors and top chains, there can be backdoor implants from the vendor, then from the reseller, and so on. It's obfuscated, but it's a real review from one of the Russian alarm manufacturers. They got a big contract. They installed alarms at some company, at some industrial site. They listed the model numbers, the locations, they attached pictures, and they even advertised the specific company. Call them and get a positive review. A host of data disclosed for nothing. Then you have resellers or sellers on marketplaces, as well as the second-hand market. It's another anonymized review. I bought a camera. It didn't work, but then the vendor remoted in and fixed it. And the person is happy that they have a back door. It happens with alarms, with smart homes. Some guy remotes in and fixes everything. It's very convenient, but it's also horrifying. The next challenge is the second-hand market. Let's say I want to buy an alarm. Hasn't it been altered by the previous owner? What about the firmware? Is it intact? Are there any extra microphones? Then there is this issue that applies both to store purchases or second-hand purchases. Let's say a device was returned and then it's put on the shelf at the store again. Are such devices checked for integrity or just repackaged and resold? I once bought a device, a second-hand device. It had the pins for control. Most likely they are used by that person, the previous owner, in other devices. Their phone numbers were still stored there. I could discover other devices. I was able to recover some passwords and back addresses for their smart home. So I could even find their real-life address. Even buying dumb devices can be a threat. Let's say you have a big, dumb TV. A bad actor can modify it with a microphone. It has the power, and it can be easily concealed. So, where do we get devices from? And why there is so many weird electronics? Let's try and delve into this. Let's say there are aspirational people, they want to invent and design something, they know their way around electronics. Some schemes are weird.
Спаян с помощью каких-то дешевых проводов, но это выглядит прикольно, это работает, и это сделано людьми, которые хоть как-то понимают, что они делают.
Some irrigation device can be weird, but it's elegant in a way, and then it comes to marketing. Some manufacturers use appropriate marketing. They present their device, they give you the functionality, they list the limitations, compatibility issues, and such vendors and manufacturers are very nice. Then there is the gray area of marketing. The publications are a bit more pushy, reviews can be inflated, it's a bit aggressive. They try and confuse you with what you actually need. Your problem is not in security of your smart home, it's about not having the function from this particular device. And then there is illicit marketing, inflated or money reviews, post factum amendment of terms, mandatory subscriptions that are required for the operation of the device, ad shows. One of my favorite recent cases is where a company that generates false reviews on online platforms began writing positive feedback, obviously contracted by some company, at some marketplace. I'm not going to narrow it down, otherwise you'd be able to find it. I don't want any confrontation. So they came up with a bunch of positive reviews and how helpful the devices were, but erroneously, they published the information of their actual contract, how they were paid to write the reviews. Another company, a market researcher, took the reviews at face value. The evaluation of the device was high and positive. So then a third company, based on that market research, started buying the devices and marketing them as a competitive advantage. A useless gimmick got marketed, sold like that. It did nothing, but it got wide dissemination. 8 out of 10 smart home appliances are actually useful. There are no problems that they address. They only complicate our lives. So the crux of the matter is, what do we do about it? I think there are two approaches. First one is organizational. You have to make sure if you need the device, if you can do without it. Can you make sure that you buy it from a trusted vendor, not second-hand, or not through a chain? Have you assessed the impacts from potential problems? Even if the device is useful, the risks can be just too high. The other part of the approach, the second prong, is technical. Isolate the devices as tightly as possible. If it connects to Wi-Fi, isolated network. If it's controlled by SMS commands or calls, find an operator where you have whitelists for incoming calls and messages. Read the documentation for your device. Ask questions to vendors. Maybe there are recommended configurations as well. There are best practices in terms of configuration for all good devices. At least something should be available online. Avoid devices where you don't have recommended configs or any published vulnerabilities, any history of interaction with the vendor. This can mean that the device is useless, that it's vulnerable, or that people do not want to engage with the vendor. Maybe they are very aggressive about any reports of vulnerabilities. Here's my email if you have any comments or suggestions, and I'll be taking questions now gladly. Thank you.
У меня не вопрос, а немножечко замечание.
Not a question, but a remark. I think network router is the most threatening device. Last year, my ISP got hacked, and most of the routers still have root access to the device, still active in my district. Yeah, that was elegant. I've read about it, I think. A proposal. I think that cheap electronics will continue to be manufactured and bought. Maybe you could make the next logical step and develop a firewall for such cheapo electronics, so that it can maybe monitor for audio streams or anomalies, some strange commands going to, well, the kettle. Thank you for the question and the idea. Sounds curious. If it were possible to supplement an existing firewall with that. I've mentioned a dedicated network for such devices. You can define any external activity. Sound, activity, other things to improve security. There was a recent publication on Harbor. It was about a smart speaker, and people designed an add-on, a physical add-on, that played noise at the speaker when it was on, when you pressed the button, to prevent it from listening. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, modifying existing firewalls to better handle such smart devices. Thank you, Alexander, for this interesting presentation. You made this comment about your personal kettle, and it was a conventional kettle. So my question is this. As a professional researcher, how many smart appliances do you have in your life? And in particular, smart speakers? Well, I'm in a weird place in this regard. I'm a big fan of electronics. But most of the smart devices haven't found their place in my life. I don't listen to music that much to have a smart speaker. All of my light switches on the walls are convenient. I don't need to issue voice commands for that. I recognize that I might be lucky in this way. Sometimes it gets boring. I haven't been able to come up with any good use scenarios. There is a gap you mentioned between the goals and the ways to achieve them. You spoke a lot about modifying the firmware, second-hand market, adding microphones. What would be the purpose of that? This could be a targeted attack at an individual or a person to know what they do 24/7, for example. But if you cast a broad net and wait for people to buy them and to find something interesting there, what's the utility there? That's a good question. We do not always know what's happening on the inside of these devices. We don't know what's going on in the market. You could buy 100 devices from different shops and look for hardware embeds, but it's too expensive. When I say that someone adds a microphone to a device, this can sound like a spy story, something that's very expensive as well. But there are dumb phones that you can get for 25 rubles, $3 to $4. It has a battery, a microphone, a speaker, a screen, a SIM slot, under $5. So if you want to mount a massive, broad attack, this could be a bad actor with means or an interested organization from some other country. This already appears feasible, especially if it's conveyor-type production. So, okay, there is an attack, it's broad. What would be the technique? I don't think you can sell it through second-hand platforms. Maybe a startup that would have a run of 1,000 units. Well, it'll depend. If the target is lucrative, say a big company or a well-off person, you can be caught in a blanket attack or a targeted attack. That's why I call upon you to be mindful of the threats that are most relevant to you and what the countermeasures could be. If you're concerned that you'll be surveilled for the devices, if this can have major impact on you, you should maybe reach out to professionals to check the devices and give you strategies. Hello. Having studied IoT devices for many years now, you've found dozens, hundreds of thousands of IoT devices where you could pull data from. As an InfoSec engineer, is it often possible to match a kettle or a toaster to a specific person with a name? How often does that happen? And an ethical question. If you did this, did you reach out to the person to warn them? Another good question, thank you. Surprising as it might be, I didn't do mass network scans. I usually select a device, purchase it, or get my hands on it, and tinker with it. Or I do a desk study by reviewing documentation, especially if I've already explored similar devices. In one of my previous presentations, I spoke about setting up botnets with GSM devices. At that time, there was services like GetContact, other services that give you address book names, and then it would have entries for summer house, alarm, toaster one in my kitchen. They're searchable by name, that's what I mean. And then you can plot graphs for their interactions with other phone numbers. It's not always possible to identify the owner, but you can identify who used to carry that number, family, future owners. So if you put the effort into it, you can identify a specific person with a name, if there is will to do this. Yes, if you're a target, if you're a mark, it could be feasible. It's not always possible to determine what device is at the other end, but they emit different sounds when called. With some experience, you can start differentiating. You'd be able to understand who the owner is. If you're at a summer house, you have your alarm, you have a toaster, and you have a smart speaker. Doesn't mean that it's not possible. Thank you. Here's my question. This challenge of security vulnerabilities in IoT, which is so huge, where does it originate? Manufacturer side or customer side? Unless customers cry for security, nothing will change. Or is it some other way around? I fully subscribe to this. One of the messages from my presentation is to raise awareness so that more people know about potential problems with smart devices. As you're going to buy something, you might have it pop into your head and reach out to the vendor. If this happens enough times, there can be some positive change. There are researchers who focus on secondary or third-tier hardware. If someone breaks into the Yandex smart speaker, it'll be big news. Yandex will respond, there'll be a lot of rumors. But speaking about smaller caliber electronics, it's not as viral, and researchers aren't much help, so it needs to come from the customers and users. I want to chip in. I don't think it's a delusion that mass consumers will be asking for security. Mass consumer and security never matches. You cannot use these words in one sentence together. They need to become concerned, reach out to the vendor, follow up. That'll never happen. Probably not, but I'm still hopeful. I'd like to hope for the better. Again, awareness raising. And we need to explain to mass consumers that information security is not just about geeks, people living in basements on their computers 24/7. It's closer to home in so many ways. Your home might burn down because of a smart device being hacked. If you're surveilled, you can be blackmailed. It's a tangible risk with high impact. You could impact that. That's not just about consequences. It's about what you have in the mass market. IT and security requires a certain skill set, and the bar is high. Even at the most basic level, it's already complicated. I'm not sure that mass consumers would be on board with that. Yes, I cannot disagree, but at least in this room, hopefully some people will start considering their selection of smart devices. There is some value in that already.
Alexander,
thank you very much for the presentation. Very insightful. 3 years ago, I bought 3 wireless switches operated over Wi-Fi. I hadn't considered the radio channel yet. So I looked at their network traffic as a professional, and one of the switches communicated with a Tor node in the Netherlands. Of course, I tore them out, replaced with wired switches. But that's me. What about lay people who do not have the technical know-how to look this up? Like seniors, non-IT professionals, how to monitor or such suspicious activity on the net. Mirai was a botnet, but if you cannot monitor for these things professionally, what do you do? As for network connectivity, again, set up a dedicated network on your router and limit external connections. You'd be able to cut off most of such activity. But if electronics in your home are cheap, the router might not support fine-tuning or separate networks. It will just not be possible. But then again, security is an investment. Time, effort, more money for more expensive electronics, and so on. So, I don't think I have a solution for you. Yeah, me neither. Thank you. I think that is it. Thank you all very much again. Let me award this book to the person who suggested some next steps. There was a nice question about trying to identify who could be harmed by these devices. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day.